He wasn't trained to fight. He wasn't issued a weapon. He didn't wear a uniform people saluted. Most soldiers never remembered his name. They only called him. When things became complicated, he was there to translate. That was it. But on one specific night, in a village that barely appeared on any map, this man did something no armed soldier could do. He stopped a massacre, using only 3 words. This is the story of Omar Hassan, and the kind of courage war rarely recognizes. His name was Omar Hassan, 32 years old, born in a small town suspended between dust and forgetting. He spoke 3 languages fluently: English, Arabic, and silence. Omar grew up in a family of merchants. His father sold rugs in the central market. His mother taught children how to read in a school that operated inside a makeshift warehouse. He was the first in his family to finish university. He studied English literature. He dreamed of becoming a teacher. But Omar didn't join the war. The war arrived where he already lived. When foreign forces entered the region in 2008, they needed more than maps and satellites. They needed someone local, someone who could explain not just words, but customs, tone, the difference between what people said and what they actually meant. Someone who could make 2 cultures understand each other while tanks rolled through the streets. Omar saw the announcement on a faded bulletin board. Translators needed, payment in dollars. He hesitated. His mother begged him not to take the job. "They'll see you as a traitor," she said. His father stayed silent, but Omar saw the fear in his eyes. Reality was unforgiving. The school where his mother taught had closed. The market was empty. The family's savings had run out 3 months earlier. Omar thought it would be temporary. A job, a paycheck. Maybe 6 months. He didn't know it would turn him into a bridge between fear and survival. A bridge built over an abyss where a single wrong word could mean death. Omar always walked half a step behind the soldiers, never in front, never beside them. That position wasn't accidental. It was his survival zone. He translated tense negotiations at checkpoints, warnings shouted in dark alleys, questions asked under extreme stress. Tell him to stop moving. Ask where the weapons are. Find out if he's lying. Omar learned quickly that translation wasn't about converting one language into another. It was about reading micro-expressions, the fast breathing of a father protecting his family, the trembling hands of a woman holding a child, the empty stare of a young man who had already seen too much. A wrong tone, a poorly placed pause, a careless word. Any of it could turn a tense conversation into a funeral. He watched young soldiers, many his own age, trained to respond to threat in fractions of a second. He watched terrified civilians, ordinary people trying to survive chaos. And he stood in the middle, holding the balance with nothing but his voice. No one wrote Omar's name in official reports. No medals, no photos, no recognition. Just a man standing between 2 worlds that didn't trust each other. A necessary ghost? Some soldiers treated him with functional courtesy. Others saw him as a tool. "Hey, translator, come here." That's what they called him, as if translator were enough to define a human being. Omar carried everything inside, the tension, the fear, the moments when his words saved someone, and the moments when he wondered if he had failed. He kept a small notebook, worn, tucked away. Inside it, he wrote down sentences that couldn't be fully translated. Not because he lacked vocabulary, but because some emotions don't fit inside words. Once a soldier asked him, "Why do you do this?" Omar answered simply, "Because someone has to." Then came that night. The night Omar never forgot. A routine patrol. A small village 15 kilometers from the base. The objective was simple: check reports of suspicious activity. Nothing suggested immediate danger. But war doesn't respect scripts. When the military vehicles entered the village, something felt wrong. Omar sensed it instantly. The silence was too heavy, the streets too empty. Even the dogs were gone. Then suddenly, a crowd began to form. 20, 30, 50 people. Men, women, elderly, emerging from houses and alleys. Voices rose, hands moved, fear spread faster than reason. Soldiers took defensive positions, weapons raised, training activated, protocol engaged. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Morrison, 40 years old, 2 children back home, turned to Omar urgently. "Ask them what they want. Now." Omar looked at the crowd. He didn't translate immediately. First, he did something no military manual teaches. He actually observed. They weren't advancing. They were retreating. They weren't shouting threats. They were shouting warnings. Children were crying. Women were pulling men backward. Everyone was pointing. Behind the soldiers. Omar realized something. Their fear wasn't directed at the soldiers. It was directed at something behind them. He turned his head 300 meters away in the direction the vehicles had come from. Smoke was rising, and the unmistakable glow of fire. The village wasn't rebelling, it was trying to warn them, but the tension was already in the air. Adrenaline released, fingers near triggers. Omar spoke, not to the officer, to the crowd, in Arabic. His voice remained calm while everything else shook. "We understand. Please step back slowly. No one wants anyone to get hurt." At the same time, he translated to Morrison. "They're trying to warn us. Something is happening behind us. They're not hostile." But military protocol is unforgiving. A young soldier, 23 years old, first deployment, saw a sudden movement, instinct, training. He raised his weapon fully. Morrison, carrying both experience and responsibility, shouted an order Omar had heard many times before. "Clear the area, now." Omar froze. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. He knew exactly what that order meant when fear was already loose. It meant forced dispersal, potential violence, innocent people getting hurt. Then Omar did something he was never trained to do, something that violated every protocol, something that could have cost his life. He stepped forward, unarmed, exposed, between the weapons and the crowd, and said something he should never say during an operation. Wait, just one word. 3 seconds passed, no one moved. The world felt suspended. Then Omar turned to the crowd and spoke in Arabic, with a firmness that surprised even him. "Go back to your homes, slowly. Show your hands. We will check the danger. You are safe." And to Morrison, without turning around, without shaking, "Sir, they are not the problem. They are civilians trying to alert us. We need to check our rear. Now." The crowd began to retreat, slowly, carefully, hands raised, parents pulling children close. The tension dissolved like breath held too long. Morrison lowered his hand, signaling his men to wait, and called for a rear check over the radio. 2 minutes later, confirmation arrived. A vehicle had hit an IED 400 meters away. There were wounded. They needed immediate evacuation. The village wasn't a threat. It was the first witness. No shots were fired that night. No headlines were written. And Omar Hassan's name never appeared in the final report. But somewhere between 40 and 60 people, no one counted exactly, remained alive. The next morning, operations continued. Orders, patrols, briefings. For everyone else, it was just another day. For Omar, something had changed permanently. He understood with terrifying clarity that every sentence he spoke carried lives on both ends. That words were not neutral. Silence was not neutral. And survival in a war zone is never neutral. He slept less, thought more. The words he chose echoed in his mind at night. What if I had said it differently? What if I had waited one more second? Morrison never mentioned that night directly, but a week later, during a break, he sat beside Omar and said only, "Thanks for using your head." Omar nodded. Those 4 words meant more than any medal ever could. When the unit finally left the region 12 months later, there were ceremonies, speeches, commendations. Omar was invited to none of them. He received his final payment, a handshake, a good job, and returned to civilian life with memories no one asked about. No relocation program, no protection, no official recognition. Today, Omar works in a small electronics store. At the supermarket, loud voices still make his body tense. At home, silence sometimes feels too heavy. People occasionally ask, "So, what was it like working with them?" Omar never knows how to answer. How do you explain that you saved people without anyone noticing? How do you translate the weight of standing between 2 fears and refusing to let either one win? We talk about heroism as if it always carries a weapon, as if courage needs a uniform, a badge, official recognition. But sometimes, the bravest person in a war is the one holding nothing but words. Omar never fired a shot, never gave an order, never appeared on a recruitment poster. He simply placed himself between fear and violence and refused to let either one win. History remembers battles, rarely the people who prevented them. But maybe it's time we change that. If this story made you pause and think about the true meaning of courage, share your thoughts in the comments. Do you know someone who was a hero without ever being recognized? And if you want more human stories about the invisible heroes of war, the people who save lives without ever making headlines, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the bravest acts leave no scars on the body, only on the soul.